Welcome in, everyone. We've got another deep dive ready for you.
Excited to dig into this one.
Yeah, this is going to be a really fascinating one. Today, we're taking a close look at the latest school news update. This one dropped April 1st, 2025.
Oh, okay.
And it's full of really interesting changes to the platform. We're talking new features, a little bit of controversy, and even some pretty impressive achievements.
Yeah, sounds like a lot to unpack.
It is. There's a lot in here. And, you sent this in because you're really keen to understand how online community platforms are evolving.
Yeah, I'm fascinated by how these spaces are changing, what's driving the shifts, and what it means for the future of online learning, engagement, all of that.
Right, exactly.
Come on inside, we're so glad you're here. Come on inside to Inside School.
So our mission today is to break down this school news update, really understand the why behind the decisions they've made, and explore what it might signal for the future of online communities as a whole.
Sounds good.
So the source material here is a recording of this school news announcement. It features Sam and Andrew walking us through all of it, the new tools, a policy reversal that caused a little bit of a stir, some inspiring community stories, and, of course, the launch of the Q2 school games.
It's a microcosm of everything that's happening in the platform right now.
Totally. Okay, so jumping right in.
Yeah, let's get into it.
What really struck me initially, just scanning through it, was the sheer scope of what they covered. It really gives you a sense of a platform that's not just sitting still. They are constantly iterating, looking at the data, taking in user feedback, and then actually, responding with these updates.
Absolutely. I mean, you see everything from those tiny, almost invisible tweaks to the onboarding process, all the way to rethinking some pretty fundamental platform policies.
Right, it's top to bottom.
Yeah.
So let's start with some of those new features. One that caught my eye right away was the automatic language support for that onboarding video.
Oh, yeah, that's interesting.
So now it automatically plays in the new member's browser language. It's auto-dubbed.
Makes sense.
And on the surface, it seems like a pretty simple thing, but you can imagine how much more welcoming that would be for a member who isn't a native English speaker.
It's huge, right? It's all about reducing those barriers to entry, making people feel comfortable and included from the moment they join.
Exactly. It's about that first impression.
Totally. And I think it reflects a growing awareness, not just within school, but across the tech world, that if you're building a truly global community, language can't be an afterthought.
You've got to design for that diversity from the beginning.
Exactly. You have to. And, this mirrors what we're seeing with user experience design in general. The focus is on making things immediately accessible and welcoming for a diverse audience, no matter their background, language, or tech savviness.
And the next set of changes we see are around the free trial.
Okay.
So there are a couple of interesting things happening here. First, new members now have the option to skip the free trial entirely and go straight to a paid membership. Yeah. It seems like they're recognizing that for some people, the decision's already made.
Right. They've heard good things. They've done their research. They're ready to commit.
Exactly. So why force them through a trial?
Yeah.
This way, it's more streamlined for those super motivated users.
And I bet you're capturing some people who might have lost a little enthusiasm during a trial. They sign up, they get distracted, life gets in the way.
They forget about it.
Exactly. So this way you're getting them while they're hot.
Makes sense. Now, the other change to the free trial is they've reduced the decline period.
Okay.
So it used to be 14 days with like 8 charge attempts.
Oh, wow. That's a long time.
Yeah, Sam even joked about that meme that was going around saying the school free trial was basically a 3-week trial.
Yeah, I saw that one.
So they've listened to that feedback. They've reduced it to 5 days with about 4 attempts.
Okay.
So it's a recognition that those repeated payment attempts, they can feel intrusive, especially if you've decided not to continue.
Right.
It's like, okay, I get it. I'm not interested. Yeah, exactly.
So it's a tricky balance, isn't it? Because they want to recover payments that might fail for legitimate reasons, like a card expiring, but they also don't want to annoy people who've made a conscious decision not to subscribe.
Yeah, it's about finding that sweet spot.
Yeah.
And 5 days seems like a pretty reasonable compromise.
It does.
It gives enough time to resolve those temporary issues without becoming a nuisance.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
And it's really interesting because this next point actually feels directly connected to that free trial change. They've enhanced the clarity in member management.
Okay.
So now in the admin view, the platform actually distinguishes between trial declines, cancellations, and customer declines, cancellations.
That's a big one.
And even on that churn tab, It's going to specify whether it was a trial that ended or if it was a paying member that churned.
That's so smart.
It seems like community owners were struggling to figure out why people were leaving.
Yeah, it can be hard to get a clear picture of that.
And to your point earlier, if you don't understand why someone's leaving, how can you improve?
Exactly. So this data is going to be incredibly valuable for community managers. It's going to allow them to pinpoint the areas they need to focus on to reduce that attrition.
Like, are people dropping off during the trial? Are they signing up, paying, and then leaving?
Right. And then you can tailor your approach based on that. If it's a trial issue, maybe you need to look at your onboarding process, make sure it's really showcasing the value.
Maybe the trial content needs to be more engaging.
Exactly. But if it's paying members who are churning, that might indicate problems with the ongoing content, the community engagement, or even customer support.
Right. So this kind of granular data, it really empowers those community leaders to make more informed decisions.
It does. It's about having those insights to understand what's working and what's not.
Okay, this next one is going to be a huge win for anyone who's ever managed an online community. They're finally adding the ability to search for churned and banned members.
Oh, thank goodness.
Apparently, before this, you had to manually scroll through pages.
Yeah, I remember those days. It was a nightmare.
Or you had to use your browser's find function.
So inefficient.
Imagine trying to find specific information about someone who left or was banned.
Oh, it was so time-consuming, especially if you're dealing with a large community. You could be scrolling for ages.
Yeah, you could be looking through thousands of records.
Exactly. So this search function, it's such a simple thing, but it's going to save community admins so much time and frustration.
It's one of those quality of life improvements.
Totally. It's like, you don't realize how much you needed it until it's there.
Absolutely. Now, this next update is interesting. In the active member CSV export, they've added an invited by column.
Okay.
They're very clear that it's not a full-blown referral tracking system yet,
Right.
but it does give administrators who are comfortable with spreadsheets like Excel a way to start analyzing how members are coming into their communities.
That's a good first step.
Yeah, it's a basic way to understand those community growth drivers.
And it's smart, right? Because they're providing some value right now, even if it requires a little manual work.
They're giving you the data.
They are. And at the same time, they can gather feedback on how people are using this data, which will then inform the development of a more comprehensive referral system down the line.
It's like a beta test almost.
Yeah, exactly. It's about iterating, getting something out there, seeing how it's used, and then building on it.
Okay, now we're getting into a set of updates that I think are going to have a really noticeable impact on the user experience. The group switcher updates.
Oh, yeah, the group switcher.
This sounds like they really took to heart the feedback about navigating multiple communities within the platform.
It can be a pain, especially if you're in a lot of groups.
So first of all, we're talking drag and drop functionality.
Nice.
For reordering groups within the switcher itself. And you can also drag and drop from the main sidebar to pin your most frequently accessed communities.
So much more control.
And they're finally getting rid of that See More button. The group list is going to automatically load as you scroll.
That's how it should be.
Right.
Right.
And they've made the view more compact so you can actually see more groups at once.
So much better.
I can't tell you how many times I've been in that group switcher clicking see more, see more, see more, just to find the group I'm looking for.
It's like an endless scroll.
Exactly.
So this is going to streamline everything.
So much more efficient.
It is. And I think it really speaks to this idea of giving users more control over their experience. They're not dictating how you organize your groups anymore.
You get to personalize it.
Exactly. You can prioritize the communities that are most important to you.
And there's even more to this group switcher update. You can now hide groups.
Hide groups.
Yeah, so you can hide them from the switcher, but you're still a member.
So what's the point of hiding them then?
They gave the example of older course communities.
Mm-hmm.
Like maybe you finished a course a while back, but the owner still needs the group to exist for people who took it in the past.
Okay, so it's kind of like archiving it, but it's still accessible.
Exactly. So it's not cluttering up your active list, but it's still there if you need it.
That's so smart. It's like decluttering your digital space.
Exactly. You can focus on the communities you're currently engaged with, and all those older groups are tucked away out of sight.
It's like having a clean workspace. It just makes everything easier.
It makes a huge difference.
It does. And again, it's about giving users more control, allowing them to curate their own experience within the platform.
You get to decide what you see, what you interact with.
It's your own little corner of the internet.
And one final little tweak to the group switcher. Any new groups you create or join will now automatically appear at the top of the list.
Okay, that makes sense.
Makes it easy to find them.
Yeah.
If you just joined, you probably want to engage with it right away.
Right, it's top of mind.
Exactly. And speaking of managing groups, they also announced that in the future, group owners will be able to delete their own groups.
Oh, wow. Finally.
Yeah, apparently this has been a long-standing request.
It makes sense. Sometimes a group has served its purpose, or maybe an owner decides to consolidate their communities.
Right.
And not being able to delete it just creates clutter.
It does. And it can make the platform feel outdated if there are a lot of inactive groups hanging around.
Yeah, like a digital graveyard.
Exactly. So giving owners this ability, it's like a basic form of platform hygiene.
Totally. They framed these group management updates as a kind of spring cleaning for the platform.
I like that.
It's a good analogy.
It is. Okay, so let's talk about something that caused a little bit of a stir.
The 50 group limit.
That's the one. So initially, Skool considered, and even briefly implemented, a limit on how many communities a member could join.
Wow, that's a bold move.
It was. And their reasoning was based on data suggesting that users in a really high number of groups were more likely to engage in negative behavior.
Okay, I can see the logic there.
Right. They even estimated that something like 90 to 95% of users wouldn't even be affected by this limit.
So it sounds like it was targeted at a very specific segment of users?
It was. But as it turns out, that smaller group, about 5% of users, they were pretty vocal about their opposition.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And this is where it gets interesting. This 5% were identified as what they called good actors.
Good actors, okay.
So community managers, advisors, highly engaged users who actually benefited from being in a lot of groups.
Right, so it's like a classic example of a well-intentioned policy having unintended consequences.
Totally. You have data pointing to a correlation between a certain behavior, being in a lot of groups, and negative activity.
And that's valuable information, right? You want to create a healthy platform environment.
Of course. But relying solely on that quantitative data, it can sometimes miss the nuances of how people actually use the platform.
Absolutely. And I think that's what happened here.
They even compared it to highly active Wikipedia editors, which I thought was a really interesting analogy.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one.
Those are people who contribute immensely to Wikipedia. They're involved in countless articles.
Even though they're a small percentage of the overall user base.
Exactly. But imagine if Wikipedia said, okay, you can only edit 50 articles.
Yeah, it would stifle a lot of valuable contributions.
And that's what Skool realized. They acknowledged that this blanket rule could actually be detrimental to the platform's overall health.
Because those power users, they're the ones who often drive the most engagement and contribute so much to the community.
Exactly. And to their credit, they reversed the decision.
They did.
They did. They actually apologized for the disruption and said they're going to focus on finding more targeted ways to address abuse without limiting those dedicated users.
That's a really positive outcome.
It is. It shows they're willing to listen, to adapt, and to prioritize the needs of their most engaged user base.
Absolutely. And it really speaks to the power of user feedback even after a change has been implemented.
If that 5% hadn't spoken up, who knows what would have happened.
Right. It's a good reminder that those voices, even if they represent a minority, can make a big difference.
Okay, let's switch gears and talk about some of the positive stories coming out of the community.
Okay, I like positive stories.
They gave some well-deserved shout-outs to the winners of the Q1 School Games.
Oh, yeah, the games.
First up, Josh Matacore.
I've heard that name.
He won with his Cybersecurity Community. And get this, he achieved $108,000 in MRR.
Wow, that's impressive.
With an incredibly low churn rate of just 11.27%.
That is very low.
And they highlighted this as proof that you could build a really successful subscription-based community around information and content.
Yeah, that's a big win for the platform.
Especially because they said it even outperforms the typical churn rates you see in the SaaS industry.
So for those who might not know, what does MRR actually mean in this context?
So MRR stands for monthly recurring revenue.
Okay.
It's essentially the predictable income that a community generates each month from their paying members.
Okay.
So in Josh's case, $108,000 coming in every month. That's a really strong, sustainable business model.
Yeah, no kidding. And the churn rate, you said 11.27%. That's unheard of for a subscription service.
It's phenomenal. Churn, of course, is the rate at which people cancel their subscriptions.
Yeah.
In the SaaS world, you often see churn rates of 20, 30%, or even higher.
Exactly. So Josh is holding on to his members.
He is, which tells you he's providing real value, something that people are willing to pay for month after month.
Yeah, it really challenges that notion that, You can't build a solid recurring revenue model around online education or content.
Andrew even mentioned that when they first introduced this MRR structure, there was some skepticism.
Right. People weren't sure if it would work.
Yeah, because the alternative is often that one-time purchase model.
Which can be tough, right?
Yeah.
You're constantly having to create new products.
And you risk burning out your audience.
Exactly. It's not sustainable in the long run.
But the subscription model, when it's done well, it creates this ongoing relationship.
Right. It's about continuous value delivery.
You're providing content, engagement, interaction, all on an ongoing basis.
And Josh's low churn rate is proof that it can work really well.
It's inspiring, honestly.
It
Okay. They also gave a shout out to Quincy Patty, who came in 3rd place in the music category.
Music, okay.
Yeah, with a drum and bass community for DJs and producers.
Interesting.
And this is really cool because it shows the platform expanding into more niche areas.
Yeah, beyond the typical business and marketing focus.
Exactly. And the music category, it's relatively new.
So it's great to see it growing.
They even joked about the drum and bass cat mascot, which I thought was funny.
I love when they get a little playful like that.
It shows they don't take themselves too seriously.
Yeah, it keeps things light.
But the success of a community like Quincy's, it really speaks to the platform's potential to support all sorts of communities.
It's not just a one-size-fits-all kind of platform.
Right. There's room for everyone.
And that's exciting, I think.
It is. And speaking of exciting, that brings us to the Q2 School Games, which officially launched on April 1st.
Game on!
Yeah, 90 days, the competition is on.
Okay, remind me, what's the main goal of the games?
So it's all about MRR growth. Whoever grows their MRR the most over those 3 months, they win.
Okay.
And they have these leaderboards where you can track everyone's progress.
I love a good leaderboard.
They did mention a little glitch with some duplicate entries, but they said they're working on fixing that.
Yeah, that happens.
But the really important thing here, and they emphasize this, is that churn is factored into the growth calculation.
So it's not just about getting new members, it's about keeping them.
Exactly. You can't just sign people up and then watch them leave.
It's about building a sustainable community.
Right. It's about providing value that keeps people engaged.
And the prizes for the top 5 in each category, they're pretty sweet.
Oh yeah, they're not messing around. We're talking a trip to School HQ in LA.
Wow.
A tour of the place, you get to meet Hormozy,
That's pretty cool.
network with other winners,
Oh yeah, build those connections.
and of course, the coveted School Games trophy.
Gotta have the trophy.
They even said they're going to release the recordings from the Q1 Winners event for free.
That's awesome. Give people some inspiration.
Yeah, show them what's possible.
Yeah, exactly.
So they're really going all out to support and recognize these top-performing communities.
It's great to see.
So taking a step back, looking at this entire update,
Yeah.
it's a pretty fascinating snapshot of where the platform is right now, their priorities, their focus on community.
Absolutely. I mean, you see this constant iteration, this commitment to user experience, to data-driven decision-making.
And the willingness to adapt, like with that group limit reversal.
Yeah, that was a big one.
It shows they're listening, they're learning, and they're not afraid to change course.
And those success stories are so inspiring.
Like Josh and Quincy, really proving what's possible.
Yeah, it's a reminder that you can build a thriving community, a successful business around your passions.
And I think that's ultimately what this platform is all about.
Yeah, connecting people around shared interests and helping them achieve their goals.
Exactly. So big picture, what are your main takeaways from all these updates? Do the changes to the free trial spark any thoughts for you, maybe around user acquisition and conversion?
Definitely. I think the shortened decline period is a smart move, shows they're respecting user choice. And giving people the option to skip the trial altogether, that's interesting. It could be a good way to attract those highly motivated users.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Yeah, for sure.
What about those group management updates? How do you think those enhanced features are going to impact the day-to-day experience for community members?
Well, the improved group switcher is going to make a huge difference. Just having that drag and drop functionality, the ability to pin groups, and getting rid of that See More button, it's going to make navigating multiple communities so much smoother.
It's those little things that can really add up.
They do, they really do. And being able to hide groups, that's going to be a game changer for a lot of people. It's going to help them declutter their space and focus on the communities that are most relevant to them.
And lastly, that decision to reverse the 50 group limit. What's your final assessment of that?
I think it was the right call. It shows that they're willing to put their users first, even when it means admitting they made a mistake.
And sends a powerful message about the importance of listening to feedback, even from a vocal minority.
Absolutely. It builds trust and it fosters a sense of community when you know the platform is truly taking your concerns into account.
This deep dive has given us a really interesting look inside a platform that's clearly in a state of constant evolution.
It is. It's fascinating to see how they're adapting to the changing needs of their users and the broader online landscape.
And it leaves us with a big question. How will all of these changes, individually and collectively, shape the future of online community building and engagement, not just on this platform, but maybe even across the internet as a whole?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it?
It is. And as you continue to explore this world of online communities, think about these principles. Iteration, user-centric design, and the recognition of the value that dedicated contributors bring.
Yeah, those are some key takeaways.
They're worth pondering.
Definitely.
It's a lot to think about.
It is.
And until next time, happy community building.
See you next time.